أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. Respected ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the 7th lecture of our monthly online lecture series. I welcome you on behalf of Center for Peace and Global Studies. Our resource person, our professor who will present today on the topic of decolonization of education is Professor Amanullah Khan. Professor Amanullah, Amanullah Saab, he did his BBA and MBA from IBA Karachi, and throughout his career has held many academic and administrative positions in different universities. He has remained Dean at International Islamic University, Islamabad, and then at Muhammad Ali Jinnah University, Islamabad, and then at Rifa University, and these days Professor Saab is acting as Pro-Vice Chancellor Academic at Muhyiddin Islamic University. So it's a pleasure to have Dr. Saab among us. And I would like to request him to please start his talk. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much, Hassan Saab.
نصلي على رسوله الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The topic is decolonization of education. The sequence I've selected for myself for this discourse is that we first talk about what is colonization. It has basically two aspects. One is the physical and political aspect, and the other is the psychological one, which is we call as a colonization of mind. And then the impacts of colonization, particularly, I would be interested in talking about the psychological impacts, which in fact lingers on even once you have got the political and material independence. Then is the narrative of colonizers, how do they legitimize their colonization? And then the main topic, role of education in colonization, the educational system and the curriculum. And within that, it will come down to the topic of decolonization. Sequence may be disturbed here and there. I would just keep on talking as the topic allows me, and in between, if there are questions, I would even welcome that, but it is always better to have questions at the end. So what is the colonization of mind? This is what we have to understand. If this is something going wrong with the if you ask me what is the biggest problem of Muslim Ummah, or even all the underdeveloped countries, Muslims and non-Muslims, which have been colonized, majority of them obviously have been the Muslim countries. To me, the biggest problem, or the only problem which causes all sorts of ills, is the inferiority complex that has been inculcated through colonization. And if you ask me what is the solution of the situation of the Muslim Ummah, right? Lots of troubles everywhere, and in the community of the nations. we rank very low in all aspects, whether it is research or innovation or creation of knowledge or the military power or whatever, with a few exceptions. To me, the solution is, again, get rid of the inferiority complex, because I think this is the root cause of all the ills of the Muslim Ummah. What is, colonization of mind, and to understand it, let me just make my Hasan bhai, what is it? ये आगे क्यों नहीं चल रहा है?
Just click on the slide and it should work.
नहीं, मैं उस पर भी कर रहा हूँ इसको. हाँ, अब आया ये, चलिए ठीक. Okay, right. To start with, I picked up a quotation from Indian philosopher K.C. Bhattacharya. In 1931, before the creation of Pakistan, in fact, it was a subcontinent. So in 1931, in one of his lectures, the topic of the lecture was Swaraj of ideas. Swaraj is basically a Hindi word, which means the independence of thought, the originality of thought. He was concerned deeply about two impacts of colonization of mind. The first he referred to was the enslavement of mind. He believed was worse than political subjection, since the latter only meant restraint on the outer life of the people, whereas in the case of the enslavement of mind, slavery begins when one ceases to feel the evil, and it deepens when the evil is accepted as a good. Now, that is the worst type of psychological impact that the colonized people, they stop even distinguishing between what at one point of time was undesirable, and then they start accepting it. The second, he said, is again a very philosophical discourse. He said it is the replacement of real mind by the shadow mind that functions like a real mind, except in the manner of genuine creativeness. It means that the colonized people, they base all their decisions and discussions on the basis of the borrowed ideas and concepts. They become incapable of coming up with some original thinking, some original concepts. They depend on the concepts and innovations done somewhere else, predominantly in the West, and then they borrow it and then try to build on those concepts and ideas. So this is what he called the shadow mind. And unfortunate part of the shadow mind is that the person feels that he is actually using his real mind, whereas he is not. He is not using any creative or any original thinking. He is just trying to build up on the borrowed type of ideas. One of our great poets, Allama Iqbal, is just the Urdu couplet. I will just translate it also. And it is, in fact, what Dr. Bhattacharya said. He said, "Tha jo na khoob ba tadrij wahi khoob hua, ki gulami mein badal jata hai qaumo ka zamir." It means what was undesirable at one time, gradually it becomes desirable. And with in slavery, what happens is the conscience of the nations change from in a context that something which At one point of time, they thought it is undesirable and not acceptable. Over time, gradually that becomes acceptable and desirable. And the second one, he said, why nakami matae karwan jata raha, karwan ke dil se aisa se zaya jata raha. You know, the worst thing is not only that these nations, the colonized people, they start accepting the undesirable. What happens is that they even don't feel that they have lost something. The feeling of loss is lost. And that is one big problem. Now, what are the important questions we have to deal with? It is, has the enslavement process ended? You know, from 40s onward or after the World War II, many countries got their political independence. Pakistan, one of them, we got our independence in 47. From 40s to 60s, most of the colonized countries, they got political independence. But the question is, have we got the independence of mind? Has the enslavement process ended? Have we achieved real independence? That is the independence of mind. Or whether the enslavement process still continues. I believe not only that it continues, in fact, it is strengthened over time, and I'll discuss it in subsequent topics. If yes, which definitely is, as I said, then how can we free ourselves and start original independent thinking? That's the big question. And until and unless we resort to our original independent thinking, we cannot get rid of inferiority complex. Until we get rid of inferiority complex, we won't be able to do anything remarkable in the community of nations. One French philosopher, he was basically a black Martinican, but obviously settled in France. He was a poet, he was a philosopher. He said the colonial culture had left an impression on black Martinican women to believe that race by making themselves whiter. Now, this is true probably of all countries, at least in Pakistan. I know the largest sale of any cosmetic is the cosmetic claiming to whiten the skin. And this is true of particularly other Asian countries and even the black countries. So this gives the deeper sense of inferiority. Whiteness is a virtue and beauty. It goes into our folk songs even, at least in Punjab province of Pakistan. I know this being a white girl or being a white man is something treated as a virtue, and people try to whiten their skins. So it's a deep-rooted thing. It's gone into our bloodstream, in fact. Then, you know what the colonizers did? They promoted the myth that conceptual schemas of Europe, their normative goals, were superior and valid for the whole world. So the very first thing they did was, through education and through narratives and discourse, they made the colonized people believe that the schema of Europe, the models, whether they are management models, whether they are economic models, political models, or whatever, they are superior to all other models. And secondly, they are valid for the whole world without taking into consideration the cultural context. They made us believe that you know, the model developed in America, whether it's a financial model, management model, or whatever, can be applied anywhere in any culture. So by buying into them, we, the colonized people, developed an idiom and a vocabulary that was alien to us, since we either abandoned our own schema or allowed it to be treated as inferior. And sometimes I wonder that if we take the history of Islam or Muslim history, don't we think we have ever produced any wise person? Can't we think that we can make our own management models or our own economic models or whatnot? The problem, what has happened is that we borrow the ideas and then we try to what we call as Islamization. Some of the other, I don't feel with this terminology of Islamization, because at the root of it, it assumes that a particular model is all right. For example, the capitalist system is taken for granted. And then we try to make certain cosmetic changes in that model to make it what we call as a Sharia compliant. I think what we need to do is we need to start from the scratch, and not Islamization, but the Islamic models. So, as I said, it is deep-rooted in our bloodstream through colonization. The vocabulary we have developed is all of the colonizers, and the concepts we have developed has come from the colonizers. So the system of ideas that accompanied colonialism constructed the non-West as primitive, as the inferior others, and as a consequence placed on Europe the burden of bringing civilization and all its accessories to this inferior world. In West, it was called as the burden of the white man. What they assumed was that because they are civilized and the rest are what they call as others, they are primitive, they are barbaric, they are uncivilized. So it is the duty of the white man to get this civilization and the modernism and everything to those primitive people. That was something to make their colonization as legitimate. They believed that they are doing something really good, or at least that was the narrative. So by giving these inferior people a conceptual language, and by training them in the cultural practices that were a hallmark of civilized people, Europe was able to create images of itself in other regions of the world. This was the white man's burden that drove the colonial encounter. So what happened was that these long periods of colonization, they disconnected the native people from their intellectual life, which in fact was constituted by plural philosophical systems that are many schools of thought. If we look into the subcontinent and the history of subcontinent about 5,000 years back, there were so many intellectual schools of thought. And there were vibrant folk traditions. There was rich literature and Islamic literature of the subcontinent was very rich, but that was mainly in Persian. And one big tool which the colonizers use is the language. They take away the language of the natives and enforce their own language. So what happens is the natives get disconnected with their history and with their past rich intellectual discourse and literature and culture and values. You know, the British imperialism, and particularly I'm talking about the subcontinent, you know, there were Britishes were in a very small population. They were so distant from subcontinent, but somehow or the other, they were able to control the whole subcontinent. But did they do it only with the power of military might? No. They used what we call as the colonial discourses to the optimum to colonize the minds of the natives, and this was done through education and the language. Arthur James Balfour, the then Prime Minister of Britain, while addressing the British Parliament, what he said was on the challenges to the empire, regards knowing and power as the two invisible foundations of the imperial authority. The economic and political control, he adds, must be coupled with the idea of knowing other people, which will persuade them to know themselves as inferior and subordinate to the Europeans. That was, and this was achieved through education and the language. You know, somewhere in 1935, they made English as the medium of instruction in subcontinent. And then the next thing is that the colonization results in colonized mentality in the colonized people. It is marked by the sense of inferiority I already discussed. In fact, I just look at this picture. You know, this is the honorable judges of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. It's an all full bunch. Look at the dress. None of them is dressed in what we call as our national dress. They are all in Western dress. Not a big deal until you see the next picture. Look at it. You know, these honorable judges in the Western dress and their attendants, you know, who push and pull their chairs while the standers sit at the back. Look at that person. He has been dressed in what we call as our national dress. He is wearing the cap, which is the most honorable cap for Pakistanis. We call it a Jinnah cap. But honorable judges are not wearing it. It is their attendants. And then look at this again. It is 3 judges are taking oath, all in Western dress. And at the back, those 2 attendants, they are wearing Jinnah cap and sherwanis. This was, in fact, the dress of our father of the nation. This is Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Qaid-e-Azam. This is the dress which, when Pakistan was created, he announced it, he designated this dress as the national dress. But look at the inferiority complex, the colonization of the mind. Then another important issue is that the terminologies which are used in different disciplines, you know, they have very specific connotations. Their meanings and understandings are contextual. Because I'm from management sciences, so I can give you so many examples from the terminologies of management sciences. But just a very common example, you know, when we wanted to get rid of interest and we just wanted to come up with certain financial institutions, we call it Islamic bank. Now, bank is a terminology, is a name of an institution which has a specific connotation. You know, we are trying to make that bank Islamic. We are not trying to come up with an Islamic institution. it will never happen, because those who are bankers have been trained in the traditional bank and doing a couple of diplomas and courses in Islamic banking. I don't think they would be able to make the original thinking or some creative thinking. So what would happen is, and this is what is happening, in fact, they would pick up the traditional banking model and just doing some hila and putting up green paint on this wall and that wall. So it is deep-rooted things until and unless we change the terminologies, the standard of living, economic development, development indicators. What is standard of living? How it is defined by the West? It's all material. The more you consume, the more developed you are. How America is the most developed country, because they are only 5% of the total population of the globe, and they are consuming 35% of the resources of the globe. So their aggregate consumption and consumption per capita is the highest, so we call them developed. And that is the measure. Until and unless we come up with our own terminologies and the definitions of those terminologies. What should be the standard of living for a Muslim? Should it be all, piling up the material things without having any peace of mind or peace of heart? That's where we have to make certain changes. The aggregate consumption of America is equal to aggregate consumption of India plus aggregate consumption of China multiplied by 2. So they are the most developed. But they have probably the highest rate of suicide, the crime and everything. So are we looking for that type of a society? Now, the structure of societies, the institutions, the market, etc., are determined by a specific paradigm, and the beliefs of the people, the assumptions they believe in, the terminologies they use, the language they use, these are the determinants of that structure. Just look at it. That's faith. I picked up just these 4 things just to make my point clear. If for an atheist, the faith in universe, it is created by a big bang, a sort of an accident, and auzubillah, no Allah, no day of judgment. So what would be the behavior? The maximum utility, maximize your utility. This is what we teach in economics and management sciences, and maybe in other social sciences also. At this point, let me make one clarification. My more emphasis is on social and behavioral education, because as far as science and technology is concerned, that is at least less prone to be value loaded than these social and behavioral sciences. So the behavior, if no God, no day of judgment, enjoy all material luxury and go for consumerism. Your faith about human beings are selfish. This is what Adam Smith said. And what he propagated, and this is what is a sort of a universal dogma for the economists and other social sciences, is just care about your own interest. Don't give any heed to the interest of others. About global resources, they are scarce. So what should I be doing? Competition. Human welfare is the maximized material consumption. Now look at this model. Nauzubillah, there is no God. I am selfish. Resources are scarce, and my welfare depends on my consumption. What type of person would I be? What type of society we would be creating? And then economics said, wolf against wolf. Yes, if these are the beliefs, we would create the society in which the wolves would be competing with the wolves. Look at the other model. We have faith in the universe. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it, and then there is the day of judgment. So if I believe in it, I may be, a very sinful person. Still, every day, and when I go to sleep, I will have something, my conscience pricking me, asking me to make some sort of a balance. No extravagance, israf, for example. No. My belief about human beings, yes, human beings have been created probably like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, says that we are selfish, but then, there's a full code of conduct which has been given to us. And how do we need to behave with other people? We need to care about their interests, rights of parents, rights of children, rights of neighbors, rights of other people, Muslims and non-Muslims. It's not that you just care for your own interest. Because what Adam Smith said was, and then the economic theory based on that ideology, that if everyone takes care of his or her interest and tries to maximize the utility, the resources would be optimally utilized or optimally distributed. Obviously, a very wrong paradigm. Global resources are not scarce. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has very clearly said that he has created risk for all living beings. Somewhere in 2010, I'm not very updated about those figures, but in 2010, the UN statistics said that the issue is not of production. They said the total production of food in the world is sufficient to provide 27 kilocalories per day to all the 7 billion people. Whereas to be healthy, to remain alive and to remain healthy, you simply need 18 kilocalories per day. So the problem is not production, problem is of distribution, which is unjust under the system which is called capitalism and the education that promotes it. I've already discussed about human welfare and development. It is the maximum consumption, but from a Muslim's point of view, the human welfare is in fact the peace of mind and heart. And it comes through remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it provides you contentment, not extravagance. So what type of society and mindset we want to create, as I have already discussed, the consequences, competition, wolf against wolf, emphasis on production or distribution, all pervasive dissatisfaction rather than happiness. Capitalism and particularly neoliberalism has been taken for granted, and we are trying to Islamize all those institutions and ideas and concepts created by neoliberalism. I think it's a wrong approach, or it is at least a very suboptimal, inefficient approach to get rid of inferiority complex and move for decolonization. The discourse and narrative, the white superiority, I've already discussed. Then the other thing was that the models created there are the knowledge creation is only in the West. But still, we believe, and we hear on our media, people, I won't name the anchors, telling us that everything is being invented in West, and Muslims have not only that they say they are not doing anything right now, they tell they haven't done anything in the history. Whereas we know that most of the modern knowledge and most of the modern philosophy, technology has its root in the Muslim knowledge. But we deny it because now we have accepted our inferiority status. Our knowledge is value free, obviously not. Every knowledge, every terminology, it is value loaded. And universality of knowledge, no, it is not. It is cultural. And again, let me remind you, I'm talking about social and behavioral education and knowledge, not about technical knowledge. So I'll just skip a few things, looking at the time. The discourses are used to inculcate into the natives of the colonies the idea that it is justified to colonize them because they are to be civilized, they are primitive and they are barbaric, so they need to be civilized. The way is that the Europeans come and conquer you and they let you know what is. One philosopher, Bhabha, he said, to construe the colonized as a population of degenerate types on the basis of racial origin in order to justify conquest and to establish a system of administration which tells you that the white race is the superior and all other races, and particularly the black ones, are inferior. Then the other thing is this: the colonized start mimicking the colonizers. I've shown you the picture. It's not mimicking only in the dress. But at times I get really frustrated when I go in the far-flung areas of Pakistan, in a small village, and I see the kids wearing the Western dress. I'm not against that dress, but the thing is what signal we are giving to our kids. But that's very important. Then, the language, English speaking is taken as some sort of a sign of an intelligence. And speaking a native language, probably something inferior. Same thing is about the food. Taking pizzas and burgers is a civilized thing. And, going for a tandoori roti or things like that. Drinking lassi is probably primitive, but drinking Coke and all that is civilized. So, this is mimicking the colonizers. But the philosophers, what they tell us, and we also, have noticed that the mimicry cannot make them equal to the whites. They would never accept you to the whites. You go and settle down in America, Canada, wherever, you will always be a second-rate citizen. You try to mimic them completely, they would never accept you as equals. So what is decolonization? It is important to acknowledge from the outset the colonization mission as a mammoth challenge, as it is not an event, but a process that involves careful planning, listening to many divergent voices, reflecting on what possible and not possible in the university context, and implementing and reviewing all actions. Now, let me just check the time so that I have some time also. Just This is Waziatavian. She says that for me, decolonization is a verb. It is an active, intentional, moment-to-moment process that involves critically undoing colonial ways of knowing, being, and doing, while privileging and embodying indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing. This is something which can be done through education, right from the nursery, starting training your kids, as Nelson Mandela once said, that teach your kids that they are not an iota inferior to their counterparts of the West. That is to be indoctrinated right from the childhood. But what we are doing is we make them dress like Westerners, we make them speak English, we make them eat Western food, and we take pride in that, and we think, yes, probably we would be moving forward. To me, it's not possible. So decolonizing is the meaningful and active resistance to the forces of colonialism that perpetuate and subjugation and our exploitation of our minds, bodies, and lands. But I was just watching some documentary of schools of Japan. Right from childhood, they teach them the Japanese culture. They teach them Japanese values. And what we are doing, we teach them Western values and Western etiquettes and everything, and we take pride in that. The picture I showed you was of judiciary of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Let me tell you, in other institutions, it's no different. You go to an army mess or any other naval or PAF mess, you find people in Western dress, the officers, and then all the attendants in some sort of national dress. It's a deep-rooted thing. So decolonizing actions must begin in mind. That's the important thing. First of all, you need to take pride in yourself. Get rid of the inferiority complex. Right? And that creative, consistent, decolonized thinking shapes and empower the brain, which in turn provides a major prime for positive change. So decolonization may be conceptualized through the interconnected processes of deconstructing colonial ideologies and their manifestations in reconstructing colonial discourses through indigenous encounter and narratives. A Tunisian decolonization activist, Albert Memmi, he once wrote, in order for the colonizers to be the complete master, it is not enough for him to be so in actual fact. He must also believe in its legitimacy. In order for the legitimacy to be complete, it is not enough for the colonized to be a slave. He must also accept his role. And this is what has happened to all colonized nations. We have accepted this role as a slave. And look at our policymakers. We always borrow ideas from the West. The worst is that we bring in people who have been away from our own countries for half a century working for Western countries, and we call them as consultants and even as prime ministers of Pakistan. I skipped a few slides. In education, the decolonizing movement started in universities across the world and in the UK. But let me just make one point clear right over here. When I'm talking about decolonization, it's not just the Muslim countries, and it's not equivalent to Islamization type of a thing. There are so many things which even in the West, people would criticize what the education is doing. at least in management, when there was a crisis of Enron in America, the largest utility company, which shook all the capital markets of the world. And then they, started a discussion between the deans and heads of the Faculty of Management Sciences of different universities in the West. And they started, preparing certain ethical courses, and they said it is in fact the problem that we don't teach them ethics, and this is why this has happened. At that point, one professor of London School of Business, a School of Economics probably, Dr. Ghoshal, he wrote a very classic article in which he said, Mr. Deans, you don't have to worry about ethics. What you need to do is stop teaching what you are teaching, and the things would be all right. And then he criticized, all major theories from agency theory onward, and he, enumerated the psychological impact of those theories. And he said, in fact, the culture we have developed, sort of a culture of corruption and a culture of greediness, it's not because that we are not teaching them ethics. It's because we are teaching them wrong theories. And that's true in our own countries also. This decolonization of university has been widespread. This is student-led movements somewhere in 2010. And then in 2015, in fact, it became violent in South Africa, and they brought down the statue of Rhodes, Cecil Rhodes, which was installed in the premises of the Cape Town University. And then this decolonization, in fact, picked up. Getting down to the education part of it, the colonization and education are closely interlinked. The role of education in colonialism is undeniable. Historically, education systems were used and abused in efforts to control colonies. In 1835, English was made the medium of instruction in India, and the whole of the education system was handed over to the missionaries. So the missionaries came in, and they came in with their full culture for the faith and everything. At this point, let me share you my experience as a professor. The whole nation and the policymakers, they are trying to teach English to everyone. They want to start English right from nursery, and they think that once this nation can speak English, then they would become developed. The question is whether Japanese developed with English. What did Chinese do? How Koreans, became developed? In fact, there are philosophers who say, and this is an African Thiong'o professor, he says, until and unless you teach your kids into their native languages, Africa cannot develop. Right? So through English and, the students, when they come to us in university after even at times 16 years of education, they come to MPhil, MS, PhD level. When I used to give them articles, at least 80% of the class doesn't understand that article. It's not because they are less intelligent. It's not because they can't understand the concepts. It's because of the language. And let me be very frank, at times, with all that experience and, at least some sort of control over language of English, I have to go through twice or thrice through an article to understand what is being said. So that is one big issue. If we want to go for decolonization, then we have to think about the language. Although the Supreme Court of Pakistan has already given the verdict that Urdu is going to be the a medium of instruction, but the vested interests, and particularly, the other day, one of my colleagues, he was telling that, the USAID has given so much of money for English teaching in the villages. And he was, very much obliged to USAID, without realizing that it's not they are giving you money to teach only the English. The English would bring in the entire baggage of a civilization, the culture and everything. So just getting down to the curriculum, the curriculum, the scholars, they put it in three broad perspectives. One is the explicit curriculum. This is what we give to our students as the teaching, as the reading material, the textbooks and everything. Then is the hidden curriculum, what students learn about the dominant culture. As I said, that if the dominant culture is English and the dress is English and everything, that gives a real good signal to the students that who is superior and who is inferior. In one of the universities, well-established universities, we introduced the uniform, and the uniform included the necktie also. In summers, I approached Vice Chancellor and said, please, in summers, at least allow these kids not to wear the tie. The matter went up to the Board of Governors. That's interesting. And the Board of Governors rejected the request. So in the scorching heat of Pakistan, they are to wear a necktie, the trousers and the shirt, whatever it is. That is the hidden curriculum, and the null curriculum, he says, what the universities leave out, what they don't teach. Let me give you a few examples from the explicit curriculum of management. The entire management, particularly finance and related subjects, when we talk of investment appraisals, we talk of internal rate of returns, the present value, etc., etc. All those are calculated on the basis of the interest. So every formula, it is in fact 1 plus I raised to power n, 1 plus interest. So in every calculation, the interest is there. Some of the other, when I was in 8th class way back many years, and we were learning mathematics, the phenomena of compounding was taught to us through compounding interest. So I think if you ask many people what is compounding, they would immediately think of interest in their mind. Although the compounding is for population also, compounding could be for the cells, for many things. Compounding is a mathematical formula. It has nothing to do with the interest. Right? But because it was taught through interest example, it gets into the bloodstream. And I recall one of the seminars in which one very educated person stood up and said, if we eliminate interest from the economy, how are we going to appraise the projects? Which means how are we going to calculate the present value and the internal rate of return, etc., etc. So that is the intensity of the terminology and the teaching pedagogy. It's a short of time, otherwise I can give you so many examples from management. The language I have, in fact, talked about is interesting. One, again, an African philosopher, by the way, this decolonization campaign and literature is more available in Africa than in Asia. Very few articles were available from the subcontinent. But I think the Africans felt it much more seriously, and this is why there's a huge literature on decolonization, and then there are a lot of actions also. So a very interesting question one of the philosophers poses: does the white man understand our customs? How can he when he does not even speak our tongue? If you don't speak that language, how could you understand the customs of that nation? But he says our customs are bad. The white man doesn't understand the customs. He don't have the full feel of those customs, don't have the full understanding of that, but he has the courage to tell us that your customs are bad, you are primitive, you are barbaric, you are this and that. And our own brothers who have taken up his religion also say that our customs are bad. This is, mainstream media, at least in Pakistan, day in and day out, they keep on telling us that our customs, our thoughts are bad. And they preach that we need to, learn management and even learn religion. If you want to learn Islam, go to an American or Canadian university to get your PhD. Amazing. So he came, the white man is very clever. He came quietly and peaceably with the religion. We were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won our brothers, and our clan can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart. This is true of almost all countries. I'm a witness to this, at least in Pakistan. They are not interested in finding out what are the common things amongst us. They keep on doing research on what are, the conflicts, what are the differences, and how could they exploit it. In his book, Decolonizing the Mind, Thiengo argues that Africa will be able to break free from the clutches of Western control over its resources and culture only when the use of European languages is replaced by the native language. With my almost 46 years of academic experience dealing with different students from different countries and at least from different provinces, from different ethnic and sociocultural background, I fully subscribe to Thiengo's argument. Until and unless we get down to our native languages, our conceptual, we won't have our conceptual clarity. We won't have original thinking, and unless we have original thinking, behavioral sciences or other subjects would be possible. Now, there's another issue coming up, and that is internationalization. And, our universities are right after that to get this Bologna Convention and all that. It's another type of, it's a new imperialism. If you think it's good for us, I don't subscribe to the idea. Internationalization of the curriculum in the context of higher education can differ greatly, as it means different things to different people. Notably, internationalization seems to be the direct antithesis of decolonization. Now, this is what I've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, we need to get rid of those concepts and ideas and models. But then we are being dragged into in the name of this internationalization to the same curriculum and all that. If we need to go, international, and we should, then certain cautions are to be taken. This is, Hasdorf said that, however, if the curriculum is internationalized with the recognition of the importance of decolonization, the two can coexist. They can be viewed as complementary rather than contradictory. Indigenous knowledge ought to take center stage in the way it is packaged and disseminated worldwide. No? But as I said, it's a new imperialism. We call it the new educational imperialism, and we have to be very cautious about adopting it. Particularly these neoliberalism and the neoliberal reforms and processes of internationalization based on the human capital approach. The neoliberal agenda of education is designed to fulfill individual aims and self-interest defined in narrow economic terms. As I already discussed, the basic theory of Adam Smith, take care of your interest and just forget about the interest of other human beings, try to maximize utility. This is, probably in all the behavioral and social sciences, but particularly in economics and management, this is the rock bed of all theories and models. But if you start thinking in terms of only individual, it would create a wedge between the needs of the society and policy form, markedly different from a Western context. Even, some European thinkers, perhaps most famously Paul Valery and Hermann Hesse, actually questioned values themselves. They asked whether the obsessive drive for increased productivity and profits and the excessive consumerism that they saw as the hallmark of Western civilization were leading humanity in directions that were conducive to social well-being and spiritual fulfillment. The evidence tells us that we have neither achieved social well-being nor the spiritual fulfillment. And this is what Paul and Hermann has questioned. It is in management sciences also, we have a lot of criticism, as I mentioned, Dr. Ghoshal, that the theories we are teaching is producing a special, typical type of a mind, and then there is there are other, authors. They very heavily criticize these theories, and they say we create sort of greedy persons and lopsided people, just taking care of their own interest and not the society as such. Ehsan bhai, mujhe bata dijiyega, if I have to stop, so I would stop.
That's up. We have 30 minutes for your lecture or question answer. So, if you wish, if you want to continue for a few more minutes, it's okay.
Okay, just I think 3-4 minutes, and then we take the questions, because I believe taking the questions is more knowledgeable. It would enhance my knowledge also. I would know what I have not covered, and in future I could take care of that, and maybe I can satisfy a few questions also. So the people who work only for themselves without taking the health of the community into account are undermining their own health and flourishing, whether they recognize this or not, that we cannot flourish unless we live in a flourishing society. I think it is a common sense thing. If the entire society is not flourishing, how an individual or how I can flourish? If I want to flourish, I need to take care of the entire society. So it's not something that most people with an individualistic bent would find easy to accept. And this is the dilemma of the West. One of my favorite professors is Barry Schwartz from Stanford, and he does talk about what he calls the official dogma of the West, where the lot of production going on, a lot of production and a lot of choices being available in an effort that the more choice you have, the more satisfaction you will have. I would suggest my listeners to listen to Barry Schwartz. There are two documentaries very fine. One is The Paradox of Choice. What he says is that if you create a lot of choice, in fact, it is counterproductive. Just one aspect, and then I would finish. What he says is, he gave his own example. He said that I use genes, and there was one type of gene only at one point of time. I would go into the shop and buy the gene and then wear it. And if it gives me some sort of an uncomfort, I would blame the company. And I would sort of, console myself that it's not my fault. It is the fault of the company. But he says now when I go to the shop, the salesman give me, sort of hundreds of jeans type, and this is a stone wash, this is acid wash, this is, relaxed fit, this is flam fit, this. I says it's such a choice list that my jaw drops. And then I pick up one of those, jeans. And when I wear it and then I find it that it is not comfortable, who should I blame? And you think, then I have to blame myself because a lot of choice was there and I picked what the best choice was there. And he says that this self-blaming is sort of rampant in our Western society now because of this lot of choice. And this self-blaming, in fact, results into depression and the suicide. He says the increase in, one of the reasons of increase in suicide is basically this lot of choice and, dissatisfaction. So we need to think about this consumerism and extravagance shopping and all that, which in fact Islam has already given the verdict on that. Israf is one of the worst sins one can do. So this is all about what I have to say, but there are so many other things. But then I thought within this 45 minutes, I need to optimize my time. I hope I have conveyed my message. The way forward, in fact, with the discussion, I came up with certain suggestions also. So that was sort of a way forward. Now I look forward for your questions. Thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Now floor is open for question answers. Any addition or any comment? So please raise your hand or I am allowing all of you to be able to unmute yourself. So please, any one of you, if you have any question, please unmute yourself and ask your question. We are thankful to the audience. We have many participants today from different parts of the world. We have participants from Myanmar, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Uganda, from Singapore, from South Africa, and some other countries. So please feel free. And as there were many examples from South Africa and the African continent, so if the brothers from Africa, if they want to comment or make any addition, so they are most welcome.
Brother Ihsan, there is one question in the chat.
Yes, please. It's not visible to me. Maybe it is sent directly to you. So
Oh, yeah. There's the question from Siti Hajar. What do you say about the idea that colonization is very much connected to Christianization?
Dr. Sab, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
ये एहसान साहब ये स्क्रीन बड़ी कैसे की जा सकती है अच्छा नहीं चलें आवाज मुझे आ रही है तो
आप ये स्क्रीन शेयरिंग को स्टॉप कर दें। हाँ, ठीक हो गया।
चले बस ठीक है अब ताकि वो मैंने कहा कि जो साहब बात कर रहे हैं तो पता चल जाए So the question was that the colonization is too much interlinked with Christianity. Obviously, yes. As I gave the example, from the subcontinent, in 1935, the entire education was handed over to the missionaries. And one of the major objectives of missionaries was to propagate Christianity. That's true. So I agree with you that this Christianity and colonization are very much interrelated.
Yes, any other question or comment? Yes, please. We can not judge your name. Please unmute yourself.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
I was not actually in your full listen, and lecture, but I have a question. I was just came now. That many secular people they raises a question on Imam al-Ghazali. That Imam al-Ghazali is a person who is responsible for stopping the progress and the modernity among the Muslim intellectuality. And Imam al-Ghazali have stopped the intellectual journey of Muslims for modernity and for high technology. So please give me any guidance on this question.
Brother, I don't think so. People have the right to come up with all sorts of comments. I haven't studied Imam Ghazali too much, but what I think is he was a prominent of original thinking, Muslim thinking. At his time, what I understand was the onslaught of Greek philosophy and some sort of coming up. At that stage, Europe was in fact in the dark ages. So what he proposed, as I remember, as I said, I haven't studied Imam Ghazali really, but what he said was we should accept models which don't contradict with Islam, and we need not oppose them, number one. Number two, he said that those which are clearly haram and clearly in contradiction with the Islamic tenets, we should not accept them and we should reject it. The only thing is in the gray area where we are not sure whether it is absolutely against Islam or is in line with Islam. That is the area where we need to discuss and deliberate. I don't know how people come up with this conclusion that he was the one who hindered the progress of Muslims. I don't agree to that comment, in fact.
Yes, next question from person Huawei. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sohail. I'm from Islamabad, Pakistan. My question is that, sir, what is the impact of, I mean, the colonization has impacted education in all aspects of Muslim world. So what about the religion inclination? Like I have seen that when people study abroad, they become their thoughts, their way of thinking becomes westernized. What impact they have on the religion? Like if a Muslim goes abroad and studies, how does his religion thinking varies?
This is something very serious, and we need to give it a lot of thought. Somewhere in 1970s, there was a conference by CIA. I think it is available on net also. And in that, they concluded that if we want to rule the world, sort of US imperialism, the best tool is the education. So for education, they adopted, so many techniques. One of them was giving scholarships to our people, calling them there. And what you said is very right, conditioning their mind. And when they come back to their own countries, they are in fact the ambassadors of US, or ambassador of UK, and they follow their policies. And that's one big reason that we have not been able to develop, because we are still working on the borrowed ideas. And this is what he said, that until and unless we go for our original thinking, we just cannot come up with, because, how come a person sitting in New York who has not seen the rural area of USA comes to Pakistan and gives us consultancy on how to develop our rural areas? Is it not amazing? And then you go there, you work on a PhD thesis, the topic which suits them and which serves their purpose, and then you come back to Pakistan and you try to implement those models in Pakistan. I think that is one big reason of perpetuating colonialism. This is new educational imperialism type of a thing. I agree with you.
Yes, please, if there is any further question or any comment. Just to remind you, this is our regular activity. We hold monthly online lecture every last Saturday of every month. Yes, please, Dr. Suhaib Malik Saab, please unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Can you hear me?
Wa alaikum salam. Yes, please go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a bit more about the comments that Professor Amanullah have made about Islamization. I agree that if we have a westernized mindset and we accept the things that are happening in the West, the theories and the practices as such, and then we try to just put some verses of Quran or a hadith on it and try to like kind of justify it as an Islamic system. And that's not correct. But I was just thinking, whenever we have to start something, we of course we have to start from scratch somewhere but we have a system running on, and thinking pragmatically what is practical and what is possible. We are part of these universities, these are part of these educational institutions, or even financial or economic institutions. So we don't have the liberty of starting from scratch in all aspects of life. Of course, we can free our minds, but in practice, we have to, and when I'm thinking about the usul al-fiqh, and then we have from the sources of Sharia, we have urf as well in there. We have masalih in there. Of course, masalih are determined from the nusus of Quran and Sunnah, but urf is something that is happening in the society and is a custom. I'm not saying we can go in violation of Quran and Sunnah by accepting urf, but Sharia recognizes urf as something that could be, taken as something. So by rejecting, I accept that we have a defeatist mentality. We have inferiority complex. We should be on the safe side. But at the same side, if we say, on the other hand, if we say we reject everything coming from West, yeah, so this is a confusion that I have. I would just like speaker to comment on that.
Thank you, Shoaib Saab. The point is, in all what you have said and what I said was, we have taken certain things for granted. For example, we have taken this neoliberalism and capitalism for granted, and we think we need to have all those institutions which are necessary for the capitalist economy. For example, the big corporations. I know this is a sort of a corporate colonization of the world. There are some 50 to 60 corporations. They're taking all sort of control of economies in all countries. So should we really first accept this corporatization of the whole world as such, and then try to Islamize it? Or should we think of coming up with some other economic models? These models are just 300 years. Their starting point is just 300 years, and then they have grown up as a joints. My point is that other than these capitalist systems, there are other systems in the world which are worth studying, although there are failures, etc., etc. Scratch even what's wrong with that. It is tough, but it may take some time. We should not be impatient that we start from scratch, then probably it would take 50 years, 100 years. But I think we need to grow the seed of original thinking and challenging the systems which we have taken for granted, and then coming up for new things. Acceptance by Sharia. For example, the discussion could prolong, but then technically speaking, this what they say is taking these cars and all that on installment. क्या कहते हैं भाई इसको ये आप
इंस्टॉलमेंट पे चीजें लेना, किस्तों पे
क्या चीज
किस्तों पे चीजें लेना है, इंस्टॉलमेंट पे।
कार फाइनेंसिंग सर, कार फाइनेंसिंग।
कार फाइनेंसिंग जो बैंक आपको देता है, इसका खास नाम है ना, क्या कहते हैं? लीजिंग,
Commission?
मैंने कार लीजिंग जो आप या जो भी है आपकी जो
कंज्यूमर फाइनेंस सर,
whole
कंज्यूमर
concept
फाइनेंस
of
में आती
leasing,
है।
which technically probably is good enough from Sharia point of view, but I always have raised certain questions on this. For example, if I can't afford a Suzuki car or even a cycle, and I get my car leased, a Toyota Corolla. Technically, probably it's allowed in Sharia, but what I'm doing is I'm doing israf. What is an israf? Israf is basically doing something, consuming something which you can't afford. You know, if you can afford to drive BMW, or if you can afford to have a yacht, you can do that. It won't come into israf. But israf is if you don't, you can't afford a cycle and you go for a Suzuki Alto or something like that. So what I mean is there could be certain things which are technically correct, or which we can prove that they are technically correct, but then the spirit is not there. Until and unless you go for original thinking from scratch, from zero, you may lose the spirit of the whole thing, but technically you may be Sharia compliant, and this is probably what is going on. So that is my opinion, and obviously there are a lot of difference of opinion on this issue.
Yes, Sheikh Najjar, were you trying to ask any question? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum,
Walaikum
Doctor. I must compliment you. This is exactly, mashallah, how the entire operation works to westernize us in every aspect of our lives, and very important, let us feel inferior at all times. But however, I must mention that the Quran tells us something very nice. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَن تَرْضَ عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَلَا النَّصَارَى حَتَّى تَتَّبِعَ مِلَّتَهُم. The Yahud and the Nasara will never be satisfied with you until you follow their way of life. So the challenges will be continuously.
Yeah.
And I think what is important from our side, we should at all times from the mimbar on a regular basis, especially the youth, tell them how proud they must be to be Muslim and never compromise that particular aspect of it. I want to thank everybody for a wonderful program, inshallah. May Allah bless you all. Shukran.
Thank you, Sheikh Najjar, for a very pertinent comment, supporting my idea. What I would request to the participants, please give some suggestion within my talk there, because it was all encompassing so many things, but I know that language is a separate topic. Curriculum, decolonization of curriculum is a separate topic. Decolonization of universities is a separate topic. So can you suggest some topics on which future talks could be, delivered?
Yes, we welcome the suggestions, and meanwhile we take a question from Rana Idris from South Africa. Please unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. I would just like to commend this whole organized speech. It was very well done. I just have a question. I wanted to ask, how can individuals and communities be involved in the decolonization of education in their own contexts? So basically what we can do ourselves to basically decolonize the education as we've been speaking about. Thank you.
You know, in fact, this decolonization, as I said, it starts from your own mind. The very first thing you need to do is take care of your family, take care of your kids, right from their childhood. Teach them that other comments came in, and particularly Sheikh Najjar. The idea is teaching them that they are not inferior, as Nelson Mandela said, not an iota inferior to their Western counterparts to start with. And then, in your own house, your living should be something which appeals for decolonization. You're starting right from your dress, from your food and everything. And then at a social level, at a society level, I think we need to have some sort of probably study circles to address this issue, and then to see what you can do at a society level. If you have a community schools, how can you give this concept to the children in those schools and all that. So it has to be, as I said, that it's not an event, it is something, a process, continuing process, and it starts with the individual to start with, and then moves on to the society.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. We have two questions that are in fact repetition. So let me ask Dr. Shahid Saab, can we continue for the two question, or we stop?
We should conclude, I think, because
Okay, Dr.
time
Saab.
is
So
over.
I would like to request Dr. Shahid Rafi Saab, Secretary General, Center for Peace and Global Studies, for his final comments and vote of thanks, and then we will conclude.
Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Being Secretary General of Center for Peace and Global Studies, and on behalf of all the participants of this monthly academic discourse, I pay tribute and thanks to Professor Amanullah on delivering a very beautiful and valuable lecture. He very rightly pointed out some important themes and aspects for thinking and rethinking. For example, the deep-rooted impacts of inferiority complex, the use of term Islamization, and the effects of internationalization, etc. There are a number of areas on which we can consider and reconsider. For instance, parameters of judging the ranks of academic institutions and teachers and scholars, or for sometimes even awarding the Nobel Prizes. We have to think and consider that should we adopt our own parameters for judging the institutions and personalities and the systems, etc. Anyhow, I once again thanks to Professor Amanullah on delivering a very beautiful lecture, and hope that all the participants will continue to participate in our this monthly lecture series. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much. We conclude the program. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.